So this is our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which is an English translation of the Bengali Sri Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita. Before I get into today's reading, I was just thinking, it's this translation itself is a remarkable piece of work. Swami Nikhilananda ji did it, but he had a very like an amazing team. Many people don't know about that. So the writing itself, a good deal of what we are reading now, the writing itself was thoroughly reviewed and edited by his secretary, who was none other than Margaret Woodrow Wilson. She was the daughter of the President of the United States, Woodrow Wilson. In fact, just reading up on her, she, for a time, she was doing the duties of the First Lady, because when her mother died and her father was still the president, so somebody had to be the hostess at the White House for all the duties that a First Lady normally does. So she was there too. And later, after that, she became a disciple of Swami Nikhilananda ji, and she thoroughly revised this the manuscript so that it has this nice flow. The English has a very nice flow to it. Joseph Campbell, who later became this very noted writer on mythology, the hero with 1,000 faces, and then he had this PBS series on the power of myth with Bill Moyers, I think. So he also helped with the. He was a disciple of Swami Nikhilananda ji, and he also helped with the manuscript. And the songs, the Bengali songs were translated. Of course, Swami Nikhilananda ji was the one who translated, but the present form in which we find them, they're so poetical, so lyrical. That's because they were put together by a poet, none other than John Moffat, who was a leading poet of America at that time. Margaret Woodrow Wilson, she after that period, she went to India, and she lived the rest of her life in the Aurobindo ashram in India. And she was known as Nishtha, which means the dedicated, and she lived till the end of her life in India. So that's some interesting background to it. It was voted as one of the 100 best spiritual books of the century, but that's just, it's just not, it doesn't compare. If you look at all the books in the list, they're all very good books. There is Tolkien's The Fellowship of the Ring, what do you call it? The Lord of the Rings, yes. So that's also part of the 100 best spiritual books. But there's some of the books are pretty good, but none of them comes even close to the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. There is no comparison whatsoever. This book is one for the centuries. When all these books written, everything else on that list might fade away. They won't fade away. Many of them are very good books, but they will diminish in importance over the centuries. This will only grow in importance as the centuries pass. All right. So let me continue reading. Last time we were reading this section, 27th October 1882. 27th October 1882, page 133, the Master and Keshab. And we read a couple of pages. Actually, it's a very extraordinary meeting between Sri Ramakrishna and Keshab Chandra Sen and his Brahmo followers. On a boat, they had come on a large boat to the river on the bank of the temple. On the bank of the river, the temple, Dakshineshwar temple stands there. And Sri Ramakrishna was taken in a small boat to that large steamer. And then he was already in a semi-ecstatic state and not very conscious of the external world. And then he's brought into a room. We read about how everybody crowded around to take a look at him. And it was very stuffy, so the windows were opened. And then he was beginning to just be able to speak a little to others. He was so absorbed in inner ecstasy, in his samadhi. And so that's where we will pick up again. We have read this portion, but then we haven't discussed it yet. There's a lot here. So on page 133, The Brahmo devotees looked wistfully at the master. Gradually, he came back to sense consciousness, but the divine intoxication still lingered. He said to himself in a whisper, "Mother, why have you brought me here? They are hedged around and not free. Can I free them?" Did the master find that the people assembled there were locked within the prison walls of the world? Did their helplessness make the master address these words to the Divine Mother? Sri Ramakrishna was gradually becoming conscious of the outside world. Neel Madhav of Gazipur and a Brahmo devotee were talking about Pavari Baba. Another Brahmo devotee said to the master, "Sir, these gentlemen visited Pavari Baba. He lives in Gazipur. He's a holy man like yourself." So we know that later on, Swami Vivekananda also went and met Pavari Baba, and some others also did. So he was very well known as a very highly evolved spiritual soul at that time in India. "He's a holy man like yourself." The master could hardly talk. He only smiled. The devotee continued, "Sir, Pavari Baba keeps your photograph in his room." Pointing to his body, the master said with a smile, "Just a pillowcase." The master continued, "But you should remember that the heart of the devotee is the abode of God. He dwells, no doubt, in all beings, but he especially manifests himself in the heart of the devotee. A landlord may at one time or another visit all parts of his estate, but people say he is generally to be found in a particular drawing room. The heart of the devotee is the drawing room of God." So he says, Pavari Baba keeps your photograph in his room. And that's pretty special because remember, in those days, photographs were rare and photographs of Sri Ramakrishna were even more rare, very difficult to come by. So long before Swami Vivekananda actually visited Pavari Baba, you can see that Pavari Baba keeps Sri Ramakrishna's photograph in his room. A room which he lived in a sort of an artificial cave there. So there he kept a photograph of Sri Ramakrishna. Pointing to the body, Sri Ramakrishna, he says with a smile, "Just a pillowcase." Then he says, "But in the heart of the devotee is the abode of God, is in all beings, but specially manifests in the heart of the devotee. A landlord visits all parts of his estate, but specially people know that if you want to meet him, you go to that particular drawing room, that particular mansion, in that drawing room, that's where he spends most of his time. The heart of the devotee, the one who loves God, that is the special manifestation of God there." Okay. Here itself, let's take a look. First of all, the moment a photograph is mentioned and the body, the photograph is of the body, and Sri Ramakrishna immediately is dismissive. He says it's just a pillowcase. Just as the pillow is inside the pillowcase, a pillowcase is just the outer covering. Similarly, the body is just the outer covering. It's not us. That's what he wants to say. The reality is within, but it's not, the body itself is not the reality. Here itself, like Krishna saying to Arjuna in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that there are these two, the field and its knower. The body is the field. And within the body is the one who knows the body, who experiences the body, one who is embodied in this body, one who uses the body, one who lives life through the body. That one is called the knower of the field. 13th chapter, Krishna says to Arjuna, "Idam shariram kaunteya kshetram ityabhidhiyate." This body, O Arjuna, is called the field. Etadyo vetti kshetragyam tang prahu tadvidaha. The one who experiences this body from within, you, I, we experience our own bodies. And experience means we feel it physically. We can see it, touch it, smell it, taste it. We feel its changes, its aches, its hungers and its pains, and it obeys us to some extent. We can walk around, we can grasp, we can do things with this body. That's our life, basically. I, the one who thus experiences the body, I am the knower of the body. This body is the known. I am the knower of the field, kshetragya, and the body is the field. And why is the body the field, and why am I the knower of the field? Why is it called a field? There's a commentator, Shankarananda, who wrote about 500, 600 years ago on the Gita. He gives 10 reasons why the body is called a field. I've forgotten most of them. One of them is, remember, because it's like in the field, the crops, they grow there. You sow the seeds and then you reap the results, the crops. Similarly, in this body, karma is done, and the seeds of karma generate pleasure and pain and all kinds of experiences which we experience in and through this body. So that's why the body is called the field. That's one reason. Sri Ramakrishna uses a much more amusing example. Field and knower of the field sounds pretty philosophical. Sri Ramakrishna says, you are a pillow, and the body is your pillowcase. This pillow, I remember, Sri Ramakrishna, I don't know where it is. It's not one of the regular sources, but Sri Ramakrishna calls your real nature, Atman, a pillow. He says, just as you relax back into your favorite pillow at the end of a day, the enlightened one, relaxes back into his real nature, the Atman. So I think this is the first time somebody has compared absolute reality to a pillow. You relax back into your real nature, just like that, and just lay back into your real nature. Be comfy. Now, having said that, it's just a pillowcase. It's just the field. You are not it. If you are in it, then you are not literally the body. That itself is a big, big thing to say. That means the birth of the body is not your birth. The aging and disease and death of the body, though you experience it, it's not you, but you are the one who experiences it. So it's a big point to make. Whole of spirituality depends upon this first distinction between you and the body. Having made the distinction, he reverses it. And you notice in the very next statement, he says, but don't dismiss it. Don't dismiss the body. That's where God dwells. And he says, God dwells in all beings. So that means in all the bodies. In all the bodies, the Lord is present. But especially, he says, in those who love God. Now, especially in the sense, not that God is more in those who love him and less in those who do not love him, or those who don't believe in him, or those who are in animal bodies or plant bodies, but it is more manifest because the devotee's attention is on God. Devotee's love is towards God. The others, their love is towards the world. So here, because the devotee is focused on God, the mind and heart of the devotee are suffused. It's more manifest there. So the example of where is the gentleman, the landlord, to be found? Landlord is to be found mostly, easily, in a particular house, in a particular drawing room. So where is God, who is the landlord of this cosmos, to be found? If you want connection with God, you have to go to the saints, to the highly spiritual people, those whose lives are completely immersed in God. So there you will find. When it's a very practical advice, one does feel something special, whoever they are, whichever religion they belong to. Those who are God immersed, you come close to them, you feel it, and purity and elevation, something wonderful, something very profound and meaningful. That's the presence of God in the heart of the devotee. Now, in the Gita, we were reading about the lower nature and higher nature. I just made the connection. In the 7th chapter of the Gita, we are studying, Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, see, I have these two natures, para and apara prakriti. The apara prakriti, lower nature, is material nature. You remember what he says there? Earth, fire, water, and there's these bodies, also mind, intellect, all of that. What is the higher nature? He says consciousness, which has these two aspects, the ultimate reality, Brahman, and which, not conscious of itself, mixed up with the lower nature, becomes the jiva, the sentient being. So here is the lower nature, the body. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says it is a pillowcase. So he is, like downgrading it. But the higher nature is present right there in the pillowcase, in the lower nature. Therefore, he says, you look for it there. If you go deeper, this brings us to the the idea of the two truths in Advaita Vedanta, the lower truth, Vyavaharika, transactional truth, empirical truth, and the higher truth, Paramarthika, absolute truth, which is Brahman. What is the lower truth? World, body, mind. That's the lower truth. And what's the higher truth? Brahman, existence, consciousness, place. In Mahayana Buddhism, it is very clearly stated by Nagarjuna, who lived about 600-700 years before Adi Shankara. He says that the Buddha taught two truths. The higher truth, same language, Paramarthika, the higher truth, the absolute truth. And for the lower truth, he uses a different word in Sanskrit, Samvritti Satya. Satyam, Paramarthikam Satyam, Samvritti Satyam. Samvritti Satyam means lower, illusory, appearance, and that was later made into Vyavaharika or transactional in Advaita Vedanta. Now, it seems so, therefore, the higher truth is important. Paramarthika, we have to realize that. It is true, but both the Advaitin and the Mahayana Buddhist, both of them, they say you cannot reach the higher truth without the lower. So Nagarjuna's statement is very clear. Samvritti manashritya paramartham nadhigamyate. Without taking refuge, without taking the help of the lower truth, Samvritti Satya, no one ever reaches the higher truth. Why are we talking about that? Notice what Sri Ramakrishna says here. Pillowcase, but you will find God there. Where do you find the pillow after all? In the pillowcase. So in the heart of the devotee, you find the dwelling place or the manifestation place of God. That's why Swami Vivekananda says, it's not that we go from the false to the real. We go from lower truth to higher truth. That's a more useful way of putting it. The moment you say it's false, so you're supposed to completely ignore it, and then look for what is true. But the true is right there. When people misunderstand the Advaitic idea of falsity, when you say the snake is false, it's really a rope. Will you now look around, oh, it's a false snake, so let me forget the snake, let me look for the real rope? No. The very fact, the moment you're told that the snake is false, it means that very thing is the rope. There itself you will find the rope. Just like instead of all this abstraction and technicalities, Sri Ramakrishna's, if you ask Sri Ramakrishna's example, pillowcase and pillow, where will you find the pillow, your favorite pillow? In the pillowcase. So there itself. In fact, one Advaita teacher pointed out very beautifully. He said, what is the purpose of teaching the falsity of the world, Jagat Mithyatva, in Advaita Vedanta? What's the purpose? What's the point? There are two purposes. One is what is usually understood, what is usually people think. It is that it creates dispassion for the world. The real problem is why we do not recognize ourselves as the Atman, and having understood some of it, why we fail to center ourselves there is our continuous distraction and involvement with the world. Now, if we can be convinced, if we begin to see that the world is false, like a movie, like a dream, like a mirage, then we can easily ignore it, or we can rise above it. We can center our attention in the reality which Advaita is pointing out. So vairagya, dispassion, to create dispassion for the world, falsity is taught. It creates, because one of the conditions for Advaita Vedanta is dispassion for the world, vairagya. In order to create that, falsity of the world is a powerful teaching. But this sadhu, Uttarakhand sadhu, he pointed out, this is only preliminary. The people who have only a superficial knowledge of Vedanta, they think that is the purpose of falsity of the world. He said, no, there's a deeper purpose. Much more powerful purpose is served by teaching the falsity of the world. It directly points out where the reality is. That which is false is, when recognized, real. What is the difference between the false and the real? What is the difference? Stupidity is the difference. When I'm stupid, I see the false. When I understand what it is, I see the real. And it's the same thing. In ignorance, it's, I don't know, I think it's a snake. When I know what it is the rope. It is the very same thing. When appreciated through knowledge, I get the reality. When not knowing it, I'm in falsity. When I wake up to it, that very reality, then it is, then I'm enlightened. When I'm asleep or I'm daydreaming, then I'm in samsara. So the deeper meaning of the teaching of falsity of the world is to directly point out where the reality is. If Jagat Mithya, world is false, all right, if we accept that, then where is the reality? Here, right here. That which you consider the false world. Today I was reading in Ashtavakra, very powerful verse. Prakasham me nijam rupam natirikto aham tataha yada bhati vishwam tada aham bhasa evahi. Right. It's Ashtavakra says that prakasham me nijam rupam, light, consciousness is my real nature. That's my own nature. That's what I am. And na atirikto aham tataha. I'm not anything other than that. It's important to say that. Otherwise, what happens is consciousness, awareness, we would all say, that's nothing very special. I know. We all admit we are aware. I'm aware, but my problem is not with the awareness. My problem is with my mind. My problem is with the body. My problem is with family, with the job, with the world, with COVID. Because I am, notice, all the problems are body-mind. And Ashtavakra here says, my real nature is light and nothing but light, not mind, not body. This body and mind, you have nothing to do with it. It is just revealed by you, the light. So, na atirikto aham tataha. Other than that, I am not one little bit. I am not body and mind. I am light itself. And I am nothing other than light. Then, yada jagat bhati, when the world shines, it is I alone who am shining. When the world shines, it is I alone who am shining. This is a very beautiful, very powerful verse. Now, this is possible only when the world is an appearance in me. When the world shines, I alone am shining. So this real I, where is it to be found? In the world, when the world is shining. The shining of the world is my shining. What do we normally think? I am separate, a tiny part of the world, and there is this world outside me. There's a huge world outside me. That's with respect to the body. But with respect to awareness, body, mind, world, including space and time, all are appearing to awareness, in awareness, and nothing but awareness. So, the teaching of the falsity of the world is to point out the reality that you are. Teaching that of the when the world is shining, you alone are shining. Now, even deeper, if we go into this pillowcase mystery, then you get the teaching of the transcendent immanent God. Transcendent means beyond this universe, beyond space, time, beyond matter, something beyond, something higher. God is always taken to be transcendent. Our real nature is transcendent. Great, that's what Sri Ramakrishna says, just a pillowcase. But that real nature is also immanent, in and through, in every being, in our own body, in the mind, that consciousness shines, which we are, and in all other beings. So that God dwells in all beings, immanent nature of God. So we derived all this ancient teaching of the two truths, absolute truth and relative truth, higher truth and lower truth, the higher nature of God and the lower nature, and 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the transcendent immanent God, it's all hidden in the pillow, the pillowcase. All right, now let's go ahead. We thought that was heavy, now some really heavy duty stuff is coming. He who is called Brahman by the Jnanis is known as Atman by the yogis and as Bhagavan by the bhaktas. The same Brahman is called priest when he's worshipping in the temple, and the cook when preparing a meal in the kitchen. The Jnani, sticking to the path of knowledge, always reasons about reality, saying not this, not this. Brahman is neither this nor that. It is neither the universe nor its living beings. Reasoning in this way, the mind becomes steady, then it disappears, and the aspirant goes into samadhi. This is the knowledge of Brahman. What is that knowledge of Brahman? It is the unwavering conviction of the Jnani that Brahman alone is real and the world is illusory. All these names and forms are illusory, like a dream. What Brahman is cannot be described. One cannot even say that Brahman is a person. This is the opinion of the Jnanis, the followers of Vedanta philosophy. But the bhaktas accept all the states of consciousness. They take the waking state to be real also. They do not think the world to be illusory, like a dream. They say that the universe is a manifestation of God's power and glory. God has created all these: sky, stars, moon, sun, mountains, ocean, men, animals. They constitute His glory. He is within us in our hearts. Again, He is outside. The most advanced devotees say that He Himself has become all this, the 24 cosmic principles, the universe, and all living beings. The devotee of God wants to eat sugar, not to become sugar. All laugh. There's a lot packed in here. So the way of the Jnani, the way of knowledge, the way of the yogi, the way of meditation, the way of the bhakta, the way of devotion or love. Depending upon how you put the spiritual problem, the solution will be according to that. To the bhakta, the problem is that we do not believe in God. We do not have faith in God. And therefore we suffer. And the solution is having faith in the existence of God, having love for God, devotion to God, surrender to God. It will solve your problem. Lack of devotion is the problem, and devotion, love for God is the solution. Lack of love for God leads to our love being scattered in 1,000 different streams into the world, flowing into the world, and we get trapped in samsara. That entire love is taken and directed towards God, you'll become free of samsara. So that's the solution of the bhakta. God exists. Have faith, believe, surrender, and then your life will be, you'll be free of the sufferings of samsara. You will attain not only free of suffering, you will attain bliss and joy and deep fulfillment. Now the yogi says, no, not faith. Faith is problematic because who knows whether it is true or not. It may just be a superstition. No. In this day and age, we all demand experience. We all demand empirical evidence. So yogi is path of evidence. We will show to you. You will demonstrate by your own experience that God is real. Experience is necessary, not just believing in God. So instead of saying believe in God and surrender to God, no. Here are the set of psycho-spiritual experiments, practices. Sit in this way, breathe in this way, withdraw your mind, focus in this way. You will get a series of mystical experiences which will prove to you the existence of the soul, the Atman, the real nature. And by that experience, you will be free. But then what is the problem here? The problem is the mind, the restlessness of the mind. And the solution is calmness of the mind, focus of the mind, samadhi. That will show you. They will give you freedom. That is the way of yoga, Patanjali yoga. Yoga is a very broad term. So Patanjali yoga. Then comes the Jnani. The Jnani says, no, not faith. Belief and not lack of belief is not the real problem. Not even lack of experience. Rather, the real problem is ignorance. Ignorance of your real nature. Ignorance of your real nature is the problem, and the knowledge of your real nature is the solution. Therefore, inquire into who am I or what am I? What is that ultimate reality? And by the process of inquiry, you will gain release, because you are that ultimate reality. By inquiry, you will discover your own reality. Your limited nature, so-called limited nature, which seems to be there, is because you have not inquired into it. As you inquire, direct your attention with the help of the teachings of Vedanta, you will begin to see that you are not this limited body, not even this limited mind. You are awareness, and you begin to appreciate. First of all, you isolate awareness. Sri Ramakrishna says by neti neti, and not just by understanding, by actually inquiring and attending to it. That this awareness, which I always knew I was aware, I was conscious, but this consciousness in itself, if you disentangle it in your understanding from body mind, you begin to see that this is my essential reality. Having realized that I am consciousness, next you begin to appreciate the nature of consciousness, that it is always shining, that it is the one which reveals to me all the experiences of life. Whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, both are revealed by consciousness. Whether the mind is restless or concentrated by yoga, both are revealed by the same consciousness. Consciousness, you don't have to believe in it. Belief depends on consciousness. Even lack of belief depends on consciousness. Restlessness and calmness of mind, both are revealed by the same consciousness, which is never restless. You don't have to make any effort to make it calm. As we begin to understand the nature of consciousness, we realize it can't be born. It can't die. It doesn't change. All change happens in time, and time is revealed by consciousness. Time is in consciousness, not something outside consciousness. Space is revealed by consciousness. Space is something revealed to consciousness, in consciousness, and not something outside. In fact, there is no question of anything being other than or beyond consciousness. You begin to realize that consciousness is immortal. Consciousness is all that there is. Everything else is an appearance in consciousness. This everything else is an appearance in consciousness is literally Jagat Mithya, the falsity of the world. Everything depends for its existence and manifestation on the consciousness which you are. When this becomes clear, you begin to drop everything. I mean, the mind itself, it turns inwards towards its source and drops everything else. And when it drops all supports, external world is left behind, awareness of the body is left behind, thoughts disappear, mind merges in samadhi, in the deepest Vedantic nididhyasana, which is same as the asampragyata samadhi of yoga. And consciousness alone shines. So that's Advaita Vedanta. No, Sri Ramakrishna says, you come back again. Then you have, see, the language is very interesting. What is the knowledge of Brahman? This is the knowledge of Brahman. What is it? It is the unwavering conviction of the Jnani that Brahman alone is real and the world is illusory. A conviction of whom? The illumined one. Conviction, illumined one, world is appearance, Brahman is real. Where is it possible? Not in Samadhi. So only when you come out of Samadhi, mind starts functioning and you can be called the illumined one. And the world appears to you. Now, how do you regard the world and how do you regard yourself? What is real and what is false? This is the state which is the knowledge of Brahman. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya becomes absolutely clear. There is no doubt about it. This is the way of the Jnani, the way of knowledge. So the way of devotion. Problem, lack of faith. Devotion. Solution, faith in God, love for God, surrender to God. The way of the yogi. Problem, restlessness of mind. Solution, meditation, calming the mind down in samadhi, and you realize your real nature. Then the path of the jnani, path of knowledge. Problem, ignorance of who we are or what we are. Solution, knowledge of what we are. Then you realize you are this infinite awareness. The whole world is an appearance in you. You are not touched by anything in the world. Now, this is liberation. In each case, the sadhana will be different. Spiritual practice will be different for each case. What will be the practice for the devotee? Faith, devotion, prayer, love of God, directing our emotions towards God, complete engagement with God. And then what will be the sadhana of the yogi? Very clear. The Ashtanga Yoga. You have to withdraw from the activities, calm down the mind and the senses and focus inwards. Settle yoga chitta vritti nirodha. The calmness, the one-pointedness, and the settledness of the mind, leading to samadhi. That is the sadhana of the yogi. What is the sadhana of the jnani? Again, a different path. Shravana, manana, nididhyasana. You must take the instructions, the teachings, the pointing, the truth is pointed out, must dwell on that. Then you think about it clearly. Once clarity is attained, you stay with it until, as Sri Ramakrishna says, the mind is stilled in samadhi. That's the ultimate, where it becomes very clear to you. After that, the unshakable clarity, just as we are very clear now, I am the body, mind, like that, even more so, that you are this radiance. Prakasham me nijam rupam, as Ashtavakra sings. This radiance is my real nature. I am not anything other than that. Yada bhasayate vishwam, tada aham bhasayevai. When the world shines forth, I alone am shining forth. This becomes very clear, unshakably clear to the jnani. So these are the different ways, Sri Ramakrishna says. And he explains in detail the Vedanta approach. Unshakable conviction of the jnani that Brahman alone is real and the world unreal. All these names and forms are illusory, like a dream. What Brahman is cannot be described. So like a dream, about the dream is illusory, we know. All of us agree. When we wake up from a dream, what do we say? Oh, it was only a dream, which means it was not real. Now the same conviction comes about the waking world. There is a distinction between the jnani and others. The others consider everybody else, the ignorant one, and the devotee, and the yogi, they all consider the dream is a dream, but the waking world is real. And the jnani says the waking world is as unreal as the dream. It's also an appearance in consciousness. This is the whole teaching of the Mandukya. In fact, Advaita Vedanta, Mandukya, it's very clear. Waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. They all appear and disappear to the same consciousness. Why would you give more importance to the waking world, that it is real and the dream world is false? No. Every objection that why is a dream is false but the waking is real, every objection can be knocked down. And Gaudapada does that actually. Buddhists do it very nicely. I was reading this teaching of a Buddhist Lama. Somebody asked him that, I used that answer in fact in a class last week. The Buddhist, somebody asked that standard question. You know, our waking world persists. Every time we wake up to the same house and the same body and the same problems, and all of that is, every time we wake up, it's persisting, it's stable. The dream world is unstable. Every time I go into a dream, it's a different story altogether. There's no connection. Then the Buddhist and the Vedantin also says, so what follows from that? Is stability an argument for reality? And the answer the Buddhist Lama gave is very beautiful. He says, all right, if the dreams were stable, every time you went into a dream, you dreamt the same dream, would it become real then? No, it wouldn't become real. If it did become real, imagine, I come to this world and when I go to dream, every night I have the same dream. Stories come continuing in my dream like a TV serial. TV serial is also very stable. The same story, same characters, all this was going on. So is it real? Does that make it real? Is stability an argument for reality? No. Opposite, make it opposite. Let the waking world become unstable. Suppose a person suffers from lack of this amnesia. Short-term memory disappears. So every time the person wakes up, everything seems new. Does that make the waking world unreal? No. Lack of stability does not make something unreal. Stability does not make something real, logically. Anyway, so this is the opinion of the Jnanis, Sri Ramakrishna says. And it's the opinion of Sri Ramakrishna also. Notwithstanding what Ayanmar says, Brahman is real, world is real. You just have to see what Sri Ramakrishna, when he was asked by somebody, tell me one sentence, spirituality in one sentence, so that I can become enlightened. What did Sri Ramakrishna say? He said, Brahman is real, the world is unreal. Assimilate this truth. Brahma Sattva Jagat Mithya Eti Dharana Karo. He said in one sentence. So the whole thing is set aside, that our whole thing that Sri Ramakrishna says Brahman is real and the world is real, and the now, so is it wrong to say that Sri Ramakrishna did say that? No, there are a lot of nuances, but it's interesting to note that if you press Sri Ramakrishna and say, give me spirituality in one sentence, he will say Brahman is real, world is false. That's fine. Little more, those who say world is real, can't they be spiritual? He will say, yes, they can be. He will not be a fanatical non-dualist. He says, no, you have to come to Gaudapada and Shankara, otherwise you can't be spiritual. That he does not do. So there, then the whole thing opens up. And then what Ayanmaj is doing and many others have done also, that becomes valid then. Another thing to note is that because Sri Ramakrishna has this more expanded and expansive view, does not mean he thinks that what the Vedantins say or Shankara or Gaudapada says is wrong. Not at all. If he thinks every path is right, why would suddenly Shankara be wrong? Shankara is absolutely right. Gaudapada is absolutely right. But that's not the only way. That's not the only truth that there is. That's not the only way to become enlightened. So here he has given three broad pathways: the way of knowledge, the way of meditation, the way of devotion. Swami Vivekananda comes here and says, why have one? To have all three. Meditate and be devoted and inquire into our real nature. And go further, he also emphasized the way of karma, of transformation of our work into spiritual practice. That's a very practical advice. And if you see, really, in our lives, we are spiritual seekers, all of us. All of us are basically doing that only. We are doing Vedantic inquiry. We also are, most of us are initiated with the Ishta Mantra and Ishta Devata, and we do Japa. We have devotional practices, and we try to do our best to spiritualize our action. At least, even if we don't directly do Karma Yoga, at least we make sure that our lives are moral, that we are not outright immoral. So first of all, moral action, dharmic. Then that dharmic action is converted into yoga, Karma Yoga. Yeah. Then he says, bhaktas, in distinction with this. So he says, this is the teaching of the Vedantins, what we are talking till now. And Sri Ramakrishna has not yet thrown in his decision on either side. He says, in distinction, in contrast to the Vedantin, the devotee, the bhakta, says the waking state is real. Dream is unreal, but the waking state is real. This world is real. We really have these bodies and these people are there. It's not just an appearance in consciousness. These are all real, but real means in what sense? He says they are all the glory of God's power. The God has created all these things, sky and stars and moon and suns and mountains and oceans and men and animals. They constitute his glory. He's within us, again, he is outside. Transcendent, immanent, again, transcendent, immanent. Now notice one thing specially here. Both the Advaitins' approach of declaring the world to be false and the dualists' approach of holding the world to be true are useful in God realization. This is a subtle point to be noted. They are useful, number one, they take our minds away from materialism, from worldliness, and take our minds to God. It's unique how, if you take the world to be unreal, it helps you to transcend the world and focus on the reality, which is Brahman, our real nature. If you take the world to be real in the dualistic sense, then it again points our attention to the great power which is the source of the world. God has created all things. So when we look at the glories of the world, we say God has created all things. In the Gita, if you remember, we're studying the lower nature and higher nature, and then Krishna starts pointing out, I am in the light and in the water and in the earth and in the I am the fragrance in the earth, the taste in the water, and so on, the sound in space. What is he doing there? He's saying that all these are there, they're all real, and I am there in all of them. What is the difference between this and the way ordinarily people think the world to be real? Ordinarily, when we take the world to be real, as we do in our day-to-day lives, we take the world to be real without God. God is nowhere in the equation. Here is the real world. Here I am in a real body, and now I'm this little creature struggling to exist in the world and have to make my way. That's it. all this is the glory of God, God is within and outside. No, nowhere in the scene at all. I may give, as Swami Medhananda was pointing out, at the most I may give intellectual assent to it, but I don't believe it really. If I believed it, I would have behaved accordingly. See, a devotee, how instantly, knowledge, devotion, all of them say solve your problem instantly. If I make an effort and say that I really, really believe in God, then really our problem is solved. Whatever happens, if God exists and I believe in God, where is my problem? When the worst thing that happens, I must say that it is because of God's will. Everything is God's will. And God is loving, God is good, God is always taking care of me. So I should be fine with it. It's very difficult to do that, but I should be if I really believe in God. So all of this is God's glory. It is real. God is real. God's glory is real. And so I inhabit a pluralistic world where God exists, sentient beings exist, material things exist, and all of this is the glory of God. Where is God? In and through everything, inside and outside. So my point here is, understanding the material world as an appearance in consciousness helps to point out the reality. Just like understanding the snake is false helps to understand where the rope is. Understanding the world as real and as the glory of God, that also helps in God realization. Both are helpful. It's interesting. If world is false, helps you towards enlightenment. World is real, helps you towards enlightenment. One is on the path of knowledge, other one in the path of devotion. Which one will take up depends a good deal on our, which feels right to you, sort of, and also our tradition, the path which we are following. One of the beauties of Sri Ramakrishna and the Ramakrishna movement is it's so expansive and inclusive. That if you are a devotee and you don't want to have anything to do with the world is false and pure consciousness and all that, philosophical argumentation and reasoning, fine, you don't have to bother. You can throw yourself heart and soul into the path of devotion and surrender. If you find it very difficult to sign on to the concept of extra cosmic God and Advaita Vedanta seems very logical and satisfying to you, fine, absolutely fine. Sri Ramakrishna says both of these will work, and he goes further and says the nature of that reality is such that all these are valid paths. This is the beauty of Sri Ramakrishna. Otherwise, what happens is, without that, what happens is what has happened for the last 1,000 years after Shankara. If you look at the texts of, Vishishtadvaita, Dvaita Vedanta, you have enormous amounts of dialectics, each side attacking the other. We have the truth. What you are saying is not quite right. What the non-dualists do, Advaitins do, is they denigrate, or they say that the dualism is the lower truth, is vyavaharika. Yes, transactionally it is true, but ultimately there is this non-dual truth. So it is the ultimate reality. So they give a lower position to dualistic practices. Devotion is good as a stepping stone towards God realization. Devotion is fine, it is helpful, it is useful, it prepares the mind, all of that. But ultimately you have to come to the realization that Brahman alone is real and the world is an appearance and so on. What the devotees do, the dualistic schools do, is even worse, because there is a logical reason why they can't accept non-dualism. So from their perspective, non-dualism has to be false, not a lower truth. It has to be false. It has to be wrong. Only dualism has to be true. The dualistic schools do not have this distinction between absolute truth and relative truth, paramarthik and vyavaharik. In fact, in all Hindu philosophies, only Advaita Vedanta talks about two levels of truth. We easily talk about absolute truth, relative truth, but remember, that's an Advaitic usage. Devotional schools, dualistic schools do not, and they don't need it, this lower truth and higher truth. In fact, it can be very damaging to a dualistic worldview. Everything has to be real. This world is real, God is also real, this body is real, this life is real as we see it, and now you must cultivate faith and devotion to that real God. So this is the approach. Let me take a look at the comments here. Shanli says, Pranam Swamiji, can you please talk a little bit about image worshipping? Yes, image worship is using Well, there are different levels to understanding image worship. One is that it is a powerful aid. Even when you say God is formless, if you actually ask a person who's praying to God who's formless, some kind of concept will be there in the mind. Some kind of, it may not externally worship an image or an icon, but some kind of form will always be there. You can't. The mind requires something to hold on to. So that became the basis of the entire technology. It's a spiritual technology. Remember, when the Hindu worships an image, it's not the image which is being worshipped. Otherwise, the Hindu wouldn't toss the image away into the Ganga when the worship is done. In the biggest festival in Bengal, Durga Puja, after 5 days of worship of the Divine Mother with so much pomp and ceremony and devotion, then that beloved image is now happily tossed into the river. Because one knows that it's that image, no matter how gorgeous and how beautiful and all, it's not God. So that's the first thing. It's an aid to worshipping of God. And the mantras, if you see, you who are formless, forgive me for worshipping you in a form. You who are all pervading, forgive me for worshipping you in a particular place. You who are beyond all speech, forgive me for worshipping you through mantras, and so on. You who own the entire universe, forgive me for offering you. It's like I'm giving all these offerings. So look at the mantras. They're absolutely clear on the presence of a transcendent, immanent divinity. And no point does it say this clay or this stone is God. Then it doesn't matter. I can do anything with the image. It should treat it like just like another piece of stone. No, you can't. That was Swami Vivekananda's teaching to that Maharaja. You know, the Maharaja, I think in Jaipur probably, asked Swami Vivekananda about image worship. Why should we worship images? Swami Vivekananda pointed to a portrait of the Maharaja's father, the earlier Maharaja, and said to the minister, bring that portrait down. They brought the portrait down and said, throw it on the ground and stamp on it. The minister was shocked. And he said, of course, I can't do that. It's the portrait of his late, the Royal Highness. But then Swami Vivekananda said, what's wrong with it? It's just paper. It's just ink. Paper and ink. It's not the king himself. Now, you give the same respect because the king is invoked in that picture. You have a sense of respect. Disrespecting the picture is taken as disrespecting the king or the king's father, late king. Similarly, you don't treat a stone image or a clay image or whatever it is, an icon, just like another piece of metal or stone. You don't. Now, a deeper meaning of this. It's not just an aid. This is something that the Puri Shankaracharya pointed out. And for this, you need to understand this is a real deep meaning of image worship. The current Shankaracharya of Puri pointed out, it's from an Advaitic perspective. The worship of the divinity, all-pervading, transcendent, immanent divinity in an image is to correct the error that it is not Brahman. You see, we think it is not Brahman. Now I'm using it as a symbol in order to, as a support for meditating on Brahman. All that is correct. Even deeper meaning of that, if you go further, it has to be Brahman. What else is Brahman? I mean, Brahman is the only reality that there is. So the error of thinking here is something that is not Brahman, that is corrected by image worship. So I never thought of it that way, but it's a very powerful point. If the only reality is Brahman, then anything and everything must be ultimately nothing other than Brahman. Is that image other than Brahman? Of course not. The moment you say, you don't have to go to Advaita also. The moment you say, my God is all pervading, then God must be in that image also. Then Sangita says, do you believe that the Madhyamaka doctrine of the two aspects of truth you have mentioned, Sabhritya and Paramartha Satya, is what influenced Adi Shankara to the understanding of the two levels of reality in Advaita Vedanta, or they likely independent events? Both. See, Adi Shankara based his formulation of Advaita Vedanta on the Upanishads, not on Buddha's teachings and not on Nagarjuna's teachings. But there's no doubt that Gaudapada and later on Shankara, they borrowed arguments, sometimes terminology, especially Gaudapada borrows terminology from Buddhist philosophers. So wherever it suits their purpose, he borrows it. And there's nothing very strange. Continuously, these schools were borrowing, and they were, they'll find Nyaya arguments used by Shankara against the Buddhists. Buddhist arguments used by Shankara against the Nayayikas. And Gaudapada is even more explicit. He says, these dualistic schools refute each other. We are not touched by their arguments. So each school, he says, is refuted by the other school, and they all refute each other, and they all fall apart. We are the only one who's remaining standing. So he has no compunction about using, borrowing and using arguments. And every school did that at that time. That has led some scholars to say, oh, great Buddhistic influence on Gaudapada. But then there's a Gaudapadian influence on Buddhism, and there's a Nyaya influence on Buddhism. So they're mutually, because they were in continuous dialogue for a long time, for more than 1,000 years. And that's good. It led to a flourishing of Indian philosophy. I say there are two periods in Indian history where Indian philosophy flourished tremendously. One was the debate between the Buddhists and the Hindus. For nearly 1,000 years, you find on one side the Hindu schools trying to defend the Atman doctrine, and as an extension, the doctrine of God, against the Buddhist attacks of the no-self, emptiness doctrines. And it led to tremendous development in metaphysics, in epistemology, in logic. So that was one time when Indian philosophy developed tremendously. Very rich it became, because of this criticism, counter-criticism, attack, counter-attack, debate. Then the next period of flourishing of Indian philosophy was Advaita and the post-Shankara Advaitins, when they faced attack from Ramanujacharya and the Vishishta Advaitins, Madhvacharya and the Dvaitavadis, especially these two schools, and others also. And then they responded. So that led to a further development of Advaita Vedanta and a further development of Dvaita Vedanta and Vishishta Advaita. All these very subtle and highly intricate, highly sophisticated, and very intellectual books. So somebody said they are brain fryers. They'll fry your brain if you try to read them. But it developed to that extent. On the other hand, philosophy as such did not develop, gain anything by the interaction with the presence of Islam or Christianity, because these religions of foreign origin, they refused to engage. They were not part of the Indian milieu, The Buddhists, see, it's very interesting. Christians and Muslims believe in God. They believe in the soul. They're much closer to dualistic Hinduism than, say, Buddhism, for example. Buddhism is radically opposed to these views, and it takes an entirely different approach to it. But you had close interaction with Buddhists and various Hindu schools for more than 1,000 years. Whereas virtually there is no presence of Islam or Christianity in any of these debates. Christianity has been present in India for nearly 2,000 years, in a large way in the last 400-500 years since colonial times. But before that, the first Christians came to India from the Middle East, just after the time of Jesus Christ. One of the apostles is supposed to have come to India. But no presence at all, virtually no presence anywhere in any philosophical literature in India. One reason is they were not plugged into that same, the environment, what do you call it, the ecology. You have to be Sanskrit scholars, you have to be Nyaya logicians. The Buddhists, Hindus, whoever they, whichever school, they used a common language, common system of debate, so they engaged each other. But these were outsiders, they didn't have that. And also, these were very exclusivistic approaches. We have the truth, everything else is false. There's no question of engaging in debate to develop or understand, get a deeper understanding of truth. And when Islam came, it became worse. It's not only we have the truth and you do not. There's no point in engaging in debate. If you try to oppose us, I'm going to cut off your heads and stomp on your temples and idols and whatever. So they never became part of the scene, the debating scene. Yeah. Srinivas Raju says the world is unreal in its appearance and real in its essence. Sri Ramakrishna, good. That's another way of putting it. Which verse of Ashtavakra? That's in the second chapter. I'll just tell you. I'll get the verse. This is chapter 2, verse number 8. Prakasho me nijam rupam natirikto asmyaham tataha yada prakashate vishwam tadaham bhasa evahi. Light is my own, my essential nature. I am not anything more than that or anything other than that. When the universe shines, I alone shine. So chapter 2, verse number 8. Girish says Swami Medhananda's talk last Saturday was illuminating. I was struck by a particular comment on one of his slides. Religious belief is involuntary. Yeah, that was a very interesting insight he gave. That belief, not only religious belief, any belief, you come to the belief. You can't just decide that I'll believe. There's one view is that the doxastic voluntarism, that term which he used. So I come to this belief. Now I decide to believe in this thing. No, what you're doing is you're giving your intellectual assent to it, but you genuinely don't believe it. There's a difference between genuinely believing something and giving your intellectual assent to it. If you genuinely believe in something, your behavior will be affected by it. If you genuinely believe that there's a snake there, you will get scared. You'll be very careful not to walk that way. You genuinely believe that there is God, your behavior will change tremendously. Often large numbers of people who assent, yes, we are believers in this religion or that religion, their behavior doesn't change too much. That's because they have agreed, they've declared that I am now a believer of this religion, or I agree to this kind of intellectual position. But inside, I don't really believe in it. I mean, my day-to-day life goes on pretty much unaffected. So that's what he means. When really bhakti comes, belief comes, it is not your choice. You come to it. It arises in you. Krishna says, what is the role of Ishwar Pranidhana? So that is one way in yoga. Notice, yoga is a path of meditation and samadhi. But an alternate is given by Patanjali, that by Ishwara Pranidhanat va, or by devotion to God, one may come to enlightenment. So it's an alternate. Neela Vora says, does the word mithya mean illusion or one that has temporary existence in relation to the eternal? Something that has temporary existence in relation to the eternal. And that is equal to illusion. If you don't understand that, 16th verse of 2nd chapter, Nasato Bhagavad Gita, Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satah. The unreal never comes into existence, and the real never goes out of existence. One sadhu said that is the philosophical heart of Bhagavad Gita. There he shows that which is temporary must also be necessarily false. Sometimes Sri Ramakrishna says, world is false. And then he says, false means temporary, impermanent. But the world is temporary and impermanent. Everybody knows. All of us know. Except that we just don't pay attention to it. And it's important to draw our attention to the fact that everything here is temporary, and that's it helps in spiritual life, really helps. But it goes further. Advaita Vedanta goes further. There's a whole analysis. It takes up what does it mean for something, as Neelaji says, something that has temporary existence in relation to the eternal. Gaudapada says that which did not exist earlier, that which does not exist afterwards, does not exist now also. Then what exists? Brahman alone exists. And there's a whole argument, whole set of very clear, well-reasoned steps which could demonstrate that. That's the beauty of Advaita Vedanta, which takes the impermanence, the temporariness, the transient nature of things, and takes it to the level of falsity. Whereas the dualistic schools, the realistic schools, they will agree, yeah, things are impermanent, that's it. Why do they have to be false? Pudam says, consciousness or awareness whose mere reflection is in the mind gives awareness to the jeev. Isn't the consciousness self-aware? Yes, it is. We are all self-aware right now. Bill, what about the path of karma yoga? Right. That's why I said Swami Vivekananda has emphasized that also. Here, Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna generally mentions meditation and devotion and knowledge. And that was the traditional approach. If you look at the scriptures, always the different schools of Indian philosophy will always give karma a basic role, a foundational role. But the higher, more advanced paths will be devotional or knowledge or meditation, mystical, tantric, something like that. And also in many cases, by karma, they will mean ritualistic karma, not our day-to-day activities, in many cases. Abhijit says, regarding the spiritual problem and solution, Ramana Maharshi gave the following example. Just as an iron ball comes into being separate from the mass of iron, gets fiery, in fire later cools down, giving up fire, but must again be made fire to unite with the original mass. So also the cause of the separation must also, the cause of separation must also form the means of reunion. All right, that's a bit convoluted. But yes, the path by which we have apparently become separated, that's the path we must go back on. I read somewhere, somebody came to Ramana Maharshi and asked, what's the way? And Ramana Maharshi said to him sharply, go back the way you have come. And the gentleman, poor gentleman, thought he was being turned away from the ashram. He actually got up to go away. No, that's not what Ramana Maharshi meant. The way we have come out, emerged apparently, that's the way you have to trace yourself back to the source. Sangeeta says, in contrast, does the advanced bhakta in some sense also arrive at a state where the dream state feels just as real as the waking state, thereby equating to no, that will never happen. The false, erroneous never becomes real. That will be delusional. For the bhakta, God alone is real in everything. And whether the waking or the dream, they are not, when bhakta says the waking is real, does not mean the waking is important to the bhakta. It's only it is real as the glory of God. God is real, God's glory is real. Dream is also a glory of God. In that sense, it's a glory of God. But dream does not become as real as waking. Then it becomes error, and then it becomes delusion, All right. Charles says, lower and higher truths are interpretations of one truth. One needs grace from God to understand and appreciate such higher and lower levels. Where is grace listed in Vedanta philosophy? Always, grace of God is, by grace of God alone, one gets a taste for Vedanta. Priya says, how would you explain Sri Ramakrishna's devotion to Divine Mother and his concurrent belief in Brahman being the one ultimate reality? Not in theory as way of living. That's it. Notice, whether it's Sri Ramakrishna or Shankaracharya or Sri Krishna himself, curiously enough, non-dualism, dualism, they all seem to coexist happily. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, transits smoothly, glides from devotion to Krishna to Brahman and Advaita Vedanta and back to the Divine Mother in the space of one page. Because for him, there's only one ultimate reality. And all of these are extraordinary and very beautiful ways of pointing out that reality. We tend to grasp the path as the reality, but the path is not the reality. One sadhu put it nicely about non-dualism. Do you want Advaita Brahman or Advaita Vada? Do you want the non-dual reality or do you want the philosophy of non-dualism? Be careful what you want. If you hold on too tightly to I am a non-dualist, an Advaitin, well, you'll get the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. You won't get. All right, let's wrap it up now. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.